Guys, before we get started in this video, I do quickly want to give a shout out to my guys at USA Sports Merch. They provide you with awesome USA Sports Merch, be that from the base MLB baseball, from the NFL, from the NBA, from NHL. They got it all. One of my mates, one of my boys, he's looking at one of the Raptors hoodies, which looks awesome. You got Mitchell and Ness, you got the regular size jerseys, whatever you want, they've got it. Be sure to check those guys out. I'll leave a link in the link below for you guys. Similarly, give a special shout out to guys at Visible for once again providing me some awesome stats from last night's game. These guys have been a lifesaver, and I've really enjoyed incorporating their stats into my videos. Check out their web. They got all sorts of easy to access stats that anyone can decipher. Sometimes they get a bit daunting with all these numbers and all these graphs and whatever else. This is easy to figure out. It's easy to work with. And it makes looking at the game and looking at basketball that much more entertaining, in my opinion. So check those guys out. Without further ado, we'll get on with the video.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 9, 8, 76ers.
Good night, everyone. This is UK 76ers. My name is Ben Glasspool, and last night the Philadelphia 76ers beat the Charlotte Hornets again by 118 points to 111 in Charlotte. Now, from the start, from the get-go, the first quarter, we were exceptional. Look, we carried on seemingly from where we left off in the Pacers game in that fourth quarter. The only difference being that this time we had Joel Embiid back, which just gives us that much more strength and that much more formidability when teams come up against us. So the quarter, actually, we outscored them by 17 points. It was 30 points to 13, meaning that over the last two quarters, from that first quarter and indeed the fourth quarter against the Indiana Pacers, we kept the teams to 28 points, which is that's crazy. That's an obnoxious stat line, but that is just shows how good this team has been of late. Indeed, on the defensive end, or when they want to switch it on. But we can talk about how good collectively as a team they've been. But the crucial difference to me is look, in the last game, on the defensive side of things, it was won by Matisse and it was won by Ben Simmons and indeed Dwight Howard to an extent. But there's just something about Embiid where it's almost like a reverse gravity. So when you talk about gravity in basketball terms, it means, defenders want to come towards you, and because you're such a threat from three-point line. For example, Steph Curry has good gravity, and indeed Steph Curry has good gravity. But what I mean by this reverse gravity is that Embiid repels people away from the paint. They don't want to go up again. Half the time, they just don't even want to get that shot up because there's no point. They'd rather kick it out to someone. They'd rather take that mid-ranger or rather do a floater from the free throw line or something like that. They don't want to go anywhere near the basket. And it showed. If those shots don't drop, if they're going to resort to these more difficult shots, then this is what happens. They concede 13. And Embiid actually had 13 points as well. So it was the Sixers had 30 points, Embiid had 13 points, and the Hornets had 13 points. It's astonishing what he's doing this season. And we can talk, about how good he is offensively, and we know how good he is offensively. He was 3 of 5 from 3. That's one of his better three-point shooting nights. He's over 40% for the season. But sometimes his defense just slips under the radar because he's just still so taken aback that a 7'1" guy can pull up from mid-range, can pull up from 3, can drain 9 out of 10 of his free throws, which he did this evening. But it's night and day when you see us without Embiid and with Embiid, particularly on that defensive end. Just no one wants to go anywhere near the rim. And I think back to that Pacers game is that when the Pacers were getting a lot of luck and were doing bits, you had Brogdon and all people like that just going by their man and just finishing layups in the paint. This doesn't happen with Joel Embiid because people don't want to go up against Joel Embiid. If they see him in the paint, they don't want to know. They're getting straight out of there. But that was a thing I just did want to highlight because, like I said, this stuff just goes under the radar sometimes. And unfortunately, I will talk a bit briefly about American sports media, the likes of Bleacher Report. They're not going to talk too much about that because they all want to talk about the sensationalized part of basketball, the stuff that looked cool but on the face of it isn't actually that important to a game. I mean, last night, I'll talk about Bleacher Report now. Last night they had 3 tweets about LaMelo Ball, his steal, his one of his nice behind the back passes, which was cool to be fair, and another highlight play, I think a 3-pointer or something, I don't know. They had 3 tweets about LaMelo Ball, but they had no tweets about the Philadelphia 76ers, who are top of the Eastern Conference, have the second best record in the NBA. Okay, they didn't talk about anything about Joel Embiid having 34 points in 33 minutes and getting 3 of 5 from the 3-point line. And this is just an issue that is an indictment on American sports media in general. Look, I'm not trying to, pretend as if British sports media is any better because you see the likes of Talksport when they talk about the Premier League. It can be an absolute mess. But with the American sports media, it's just there's no effort to even try and hide the fact that they have biases and they have agendas and they have narratives they want to push. They're not there to document what's happening in the NBA or the NFL or the MLB. They're there to try and force narratives. They're there to polarize audiences. They're there to just be controversial for controversy's sake. They're not there to document what's happening, and it's a real shame because this, rightly or wrongly, they have a huge influence on the MVP votes. And had LeBron had exactly the same game as Embiid, 34 points in 33 minutes with 3 or 5 from the field and 11 rebounds, whatever else, they'd be all over it. And unfortunately, the casuals who influence debates because they go on Twitter, they go on social media, and they say what they basically regurgitate the opinions they see by the likes of Bleacher Report. They'll go on and say, well, LeBron deserves MVP because Bleacher Report were tweeting about it when he did 34 and 11. But people will forget about Joel Embiid getting 34 and 11 because no one documents it because it's not deemed newsworthy by those people. So that's just a little thing I want to get off my chest. And it is really frustrating, but it's also a testament. This is why I think a lot of NBA fans are going to YouTube or going to Twitter to get their news regarding basketball because I'm not trying to big myself up. I'm a nobody in the grand scheme of YouTube. But when you talk about, some of my favorite YouTubers, I think like Funky Diabetic, I think of Rusty Bucket, they're exceptional at what they do because they give unbiased. They just want to, analysis. They just want to talk basketball. They don't have any agendas. They don't have any narratives they want to push. They just want to talk basketball, and they're far more informative than anyone at Bleacher Report, or anyone at Fox Sports, or anyone of that sort of area. So you just need to up your game, American sports media. Not as if they're going to look at this, they won't. But that's just something that's really annoyed me, and I think it's a real sign of the times in sports media in general is that people are just trying to appeal to almost the moronic side of the audience, the people that want to get in, verbal battles over nothing, when really it's being, the battles they're getting in are just being a narrative being peddled by the people up top because it makes for good entertainment for them and it gets clicks and all that. It's a real shame where sports media is going. But anyway, that's just my little run over. Let's talk about the game again. So we talk about Embiid's rim protection, but there's also the active hands on the Sixers. Seth Curry got a block early on in that first quarter. I think Danny Green had a steal or two. Ben Simmons had a block on Devontae Graham in the corner. Everyone wanted to defend, and that it's what makes the world a difference. Look, of course, the Hornets are never going to be kept to 13 points every quarter, and we know that because they scored 111 at the end of it. But when everyone wants to defend and everyone wants to play basketball the right way, the game's a hell of a lot easier. And look, we know the Sixers dipped a bit in that second half in terms of their performance and their output. But if this lasts for 4 quarters, then which is very doable, is very possible, then this team is so formidable, and teams don't want to play against them because on both ends they're like, well, how do we score on Embiid at the rim? How do we get past Ben Simmons? But also, how do we defend Embiid? How do we defend Ben Simmons? How do we defend Tobias Harris, who's a perennial All-Star? I want him to get the All-Star appearance. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't think he's going to get it. I think someone like Chris Middleton and Domantas Sabonis will finish just ahead of him, which is a shame. But he still had a fantastic season and still so many positives to take. But yeah, it's just that we're giving teams a lot of problems, and we did all this without Seth Curry didn't. He's still obviously got a few lingering issues regarding, I don't know if it's COVID. I think someone said it might be his ankle as well. But we've seen ruts like this happen before. I recall JJ Redick hitting a rut like this, and the thing about three-point shooters like JJ Redick and Seth Curry is they'll get out of this rut sooner or later. And JJ did. I think it was season before last, and Seth will do the same. He's still shooting at a ridiculously good clip. Honestly, he's probably just under 50% from three now. He was 45% last season. That was always going to level out. He was near enough 60% at the start of this season. It was always going to level out. He'll get down to the 45% mark. But he'll kick on and he'll get back to his best, I'm sure. But the beauty of this team is that when Seth Curry isn't doing his best, Shake Milton steps up. And Shake Milton's been averaging 14 points, and his 3-point shot isn't quite there. I want to say he's around 32%, when really he could be 38%, pushing 40%. And I expect that to go up. I think it will change. And he did hit a three this evening. But what's beautiful about his game is that the way he goes to the rim and his floater game, it's almost automatic. And I don't get worried when he's doing it. And he's 6'2", 6'3", not the tallest guy ever, not the widest guy ever in terms of strength or muscle. but he's just so clever and he contorts his body well to draw contact when necessary. And he just knows what he's doing, finishing with both hands. And it's a breath of fresh air to have that guy on the bench, that sixth man. They'll be like, okay, maybe Danny Green's not quite doing it. Maybe Shake Milton. No, not Shake Milton. Maybe Steph Curry's not quite doing it. Let's bring in Shake Milton. Let's bring in Tyrese Maxey. And that is such a good weapon to have in your arsenal if you have a deep roster. It's really, it's not a hard thing to understand. It's just having a deep roster that can fill in the gaps when someone else isn't quite up for it. But yeah, Seth Curry will be back soon enough in terms of what we expect from him. Everyone has these sort of ruts. Ben Simmons had that rut, and now he's looking back to what we expect from the guy. Do I still want a bit more? Yeah, of course, but I'm still getting at the very least a minimum sort of level of what I expect from the guy. But there's more to come from him, I'm sure. So yeah, that was the first quarter. Second quarter, the Hornets they were running out of luck. They needed to try something needed to roll the dice and figure out how on earth can we get back into this game. Also, there's a 17-point deficit. They go small, and Dwight Howard just exploited it. And you guys will know I've been a bit of a critic of Dwight Howard over the last few games. I've been really frustrated with the fouls. I've been really frustrated with the technicals, and I've been really frustrated with the fact he seems like to drop the ball at the most annoying times. But he exploited that. It was really simple for him. He had 5 points and 5 rebounds relatively quickly in that second quarter. He had Miles Bridges at the 5. And speaking of Miles Bridges, he's a fantastically fun player to watch. Like I clowned him a bit on Twitter because he was flexing on a dunk when he was 17 points down, but he's good. He's really fun to watch. You'd pay to watch him. His athleticism, and he's draining threes now as well by the looks of things. He is a really fun player to watch, and I will, do my best to watch a bit more Charlotte games when you've got someone like Miles Bridges who's so athletic and can dunk ridiculously well, and you've got LaMelo Ball who can, just throw out dimes left, right, and centre. Then you've got a really entertaining basketball team. Are they the best one I've ever seen? No, of course not. But there's entertainment value there. But anyway, they went small with Miles Bridges, and as good as he is, as good as I think he is, and what I've seen, as good as I've seen, you can't beat Dwight Howard in that sort of thing. So Dwight Howard had an absolute field day. So all you want from that second unit is just to repel any advances from the Hornets, and they did that. Yes, I alluded to Bridges and Balls had some cool plays. Danny Green had a 4-point play, didn't convert on the free throw, but that's when you get hyped. That's when you wish fans were back. Admittedly, it was at the Spectrum Center in Charlotte, but you want the fans to see that. I mean, if had it been at the Wells Fargo Center, it would have been eruptions, and yeah, it was it was a real it's just always a real shame that fans aren't there for plays like that, because that just gets you out of the seat. I mean, I'm on the other side of the Atlantic, and I was out my seat for it, which is a real shame. The Sixers were just in their groove that whole game, and it was so fun to watch. Embiid passing, he's dishing out a couple cross court passes. Look towards the tail end of the game, he was a few sloppy turnovers here and there with regards to passing, but it's undeniable that his passing has improved greatly. He can be posting a guy down on that strong side, and then look up, see Danny Green in the corner on the weak side, for example, throw it to him at a good pace, and Danny Green will just take it and shoot. And this is all you want. And I've always said, perhaps it's naivety because I've never played basketball and I've only really got into it recently. It's a naivety that if there's a double team, then that means there's a guy open. How hard it can really be to get that guy open. And look, we don't know what's going on behind closed doors, how Doc's coaching his team, but it feels like he's just made basketball easy again for this team. They've streamlined everything. Be that for Tobias Harris with how he's going about his offensive game, or for Joel Embiid and how he's attacking the double teams. It really is. I do think Doc deserves a lot of credit, and indeed his coaching staff. Could they've simplified basketball? I think that is the main takeaway. All Danny Green needs to do is stand in the corner and defend. It really is as simple as that. Danny Green had 16 points, 4 or 7 from 3. A lot of these assisted off Ben Simmons. Speaking of which, I saw a crazy stat relating to Ben Simmons and relating to what Danny Green, his 3-point percentage when Ben Simmons is passing the ball, is I want to say in and around 40%. When it's not, it's you're looking at mid 30s, low 30s, which is just incredible. I mean, people can clown on Ben Simmons for all they want, but when you see stats like that, when you see how he impacts people getting open because he has that gravity and defenders have to go towards him because otherwise he's going to run straight to the bucket. When he has that and he can create space so easily for the shooters like Green, like Korkmaz, like Curry, then their 3-point percentage go up. They thrive as a result of Ben Simmons being on the court. And that stat exemplified that. I'm really sorry that I couldn't find it. I just saw it and I thought I should have saved it just for this video alone and put it up. But that was a really cool stat. Like I said, it just illustrates that Ben Simmons is useful for this team because some people still don't quite believe that, but he is. And that stat is the most obvious thing going. that was the end of the first half. We outscored them again by 5 points. Sorry, 34-29. We finished the half 20 points up, 64-42, 22 points up. Now the hope would be that we just see off the third quarter, and then fourth quarter comes, we can just play those bench players, because we do have the Portland Trailblazers tonight, which will be a tougher test. I know CJ won't be playing, I know Nurkic won't be playing, and there's rumours that maybe even Lillard might have a bit of a knock, but they've still got players that can do stuff. They've still, Gary Trent's a cool player. Anthony Simons has been improving a lot. Melo's just out there, and I'm sure he's just a good guy to have around the team. But you wanted to save it for this test, because it'll be a tougher test against Portland for sure. But we let Charlotte back into it, which is a real shame. The Sixers got complacent. Um, I think naturally when you have that 22-point lead, you think, oh, I can perhaps try something a bit crazier that I wouldn't normally do had the game be tighter, because we're up so much, we can just try these new experiments out. And that's the issue, is that, I mean, Al Abdenabi said, if regardless of the lead, you've got to treat it like it's 0-0, because otherwise this is how Charlotte get back into it. Admittedly, a lot of it was down to Charlotte also being lights out from three. They were just hitting everything from three. But we were gifting them. They went on a 17-6 run. They were 6-7 from three. That's what I've written down here, which is wild. That really ignited their comeback. We let them back in, but towards the end, we again got that Simmons, Thibault, and Howard zone defense out, and it's crazy that those three as a lineup, we all know, was a liability, and that was when teams made their runs. We bring it out now since that Pacers game, and people don't score on it. And it's such a testament against the improvements that these players have made, the cohesion that they've created amongst each other, but also to the coaching. Because obviously there must be work being put in behind the scenes to make this lineup work, and they've done that. So when this lineup came back in, it was an 8-0 run for the Sixers just to keep the Hornets at bay. They did outscore us by 7 points, and we were down 50. No, we were up 15. Sorry, by the time we entered the fourth, but we held them at bay because of this team. But it's worth noting, like, we did have a 26-point lead at one point, and you can't just let these leads erode away. Because we did it against the Hornets. Thankfully, we won. We did it against the Wizards. Thankfully, we won. Bradley Beal, that was our 60-point game. We were up around 20, 25 points or so. And we did it against the Lakers. And look, the Lakers are a good team, and it was a lesser lead as well, 15 points. But you've got to just not get complacent. You need to make sure that you see the game out, and you take care of the ball, and then make sure every possession counts. Because, again, a lot of this was to do with Hornets shooting brilliantly, but it's also that we gifted them a lot of the ball. If you took sloppy turnovers here and there, be that an Embiid pass, be that Simmons had an inbound after a free throw and gifted them the ball, and they went and hit a three, Malik Monk. But yeah, we just need to make sure we don't get complacent. And I do think whenever these leads are getting eroded away, when Doc at the Clippers against the Nuggets, and how those leads get chipped into before you know it, they lost the game. So we just need to be wary of that. And I'm sure Doc knows better than anyone. So it's just all about not being complacent, being professional the whole way through. And what I highlighted here was just game management. You need to, like I said, continue to be professional. You need to treat every possession like it's the final one. You need to get the point. You need to get the bucket. You need to get the stop. It's all about it's as simple as that. Game management needs to be worked on with the guys, because as soon as the mentality that you've won has come in, that's when you start losing. Anyway, the fourth quarter, we did get outscored again by the Hornets by 6, but it was too little too late. Dwight had some cool minutes. We did perhaps overuse the bench. The starters came in on the 7-minute mark. That might have been a bit too late, because the Hornets were really going for it, as you'd imagine. They needed to get points, and so they did bring out the big guns quite early, but we held them at bay, as you can see. But they weren't going away, to their credit, the Hornets. I think it was very easy to pack up, even after that first quarter alone. But they kept chipping away, kept getting at it. I do like their team. Some players aren't that great. Cody Zeller, Bismack Biyombo aren't the best ever. I mean, Zeller's not bad, but I think it's just, Embiid just makes every centre look bad. But they had what was frustrating at the end of the fourth, like the LaMelo Ball steal when the game was over, and then it ends up with Borrego taking a couple times out. And unfortunately, especially here, that's 2:30 in the morning. I'm ready to go to bed. The game's won. I don't need all this tedious stuff. Just please get the game over and done with. I'm sure if you're watching from Philly, or from that from the United States. That's not an issue for you guys, but for me, it's so draining and it doesn't help at all. But I can't complain. We got the win. So that was the Sixers game against the Charlotte Hornets. A lot of positives, but it was a real shame that we couldn't quite go out on the high that we expected with a blowout win with the likes of Embiid, the likes of Simmons, being able to sit for the majority of the fourth, if not the whole fourth. But there's lessons to be learned. That's again another positive that we can learn to make sure we don't let complacency come into our game, that we remain professional, that we treat the opponent with respect, that we don't play down to them. But this is all stuff that you want to be learning in the regular season rather than the playoffs. So if these errors have to come at any point, you'd rather it come now. But anyway, that's all from me. I'll be back again for the Portland game this evening. That'll be up probably this time tomorrow, I guess. So thanks very much, guys, and I will see you all next time.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.